Woo! All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of Dropping Dimes. I saw that I had no views on the last one, but I'm going to continue going and busting my ass until we actually start getting some views, start making a name for ourselves. And if not, guess what? We're going to still have fun anyways. So, obviously, if you guys don't know, I'm Neil the Greek. It says it right there. Thank you to the 2001 theme song by Kevin MacLeod, a non-royalty free music there, or royalty free music there. So I was able to put that on the site without having to worry about getting busted. So thank you there. Um, let's start with something that has nothing to do with sports. We're in a place now where it's a bad place for America. Let's be honest. In case you guys didn't see today, Charlie Kirk got shot and killed at a rally in Utah. I think it was on the University. I think it was on the campus of the University of Utah. I'm not sure about that, but I believe it was. Sad, 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 sad. Just like going back to the Martin Luther King days. Sad. Somebody's just trying to help out the universe, help out people. He has some extreme. I mean, like his some of his ideas or at least viewpoints some people might not like, but to see a man get murdered over that, it's sad, honestly. I mean, anybody that gets murdered is sad, but that's a very sad state of mind right there, or very sad day in our long history of the country, and it happens every day, and it's not just this one guy, but just sad to turn on the news and see that. So, anyways, obviously, we're not here to talk politics or that. Just wanted to throw it out there because it's a bad day for America, but we carry on. Um, God bless, rest his soul. Hopefully, he's upstairs in heaven. I've heard reports that he was saved, so that's a good thing. Anyways, moving on to sports. Had a big weekend in sports this past weekend. It is Wednesday, September 10th. So we're going to recap a little bit of what we saw this past weekend, and then we're going to talk about some things that we've seen so far to this point, and what we maybe expect to see this coming weekend. We're not going to give out any picks today, but we will go over some lines that I'm like looking at to see what happens with these guys with these lines. So um, obviously, this is a work in progress. I'm not a video kind of guy. I'm learning on the fly as I go. The software for these YouTube videos for Riverside.fm, it is not easy. Once you get to hang of it, I'm sure it is, but to start out, it is not, especially when you're trying to do it by yourself. So have some patience. Hopefully, you like the content. I'm good at two things: making people laugh and numbers and sports. So I guess that's three things. But anyways, um, I wanted to start off by talking about before we get into football. I saw a couple of things today from the NBA. Um, I saw that they're going to do a rule change as far as when a guy heaves the ball like a long shot, like I guess half court or beyond at the buzzer, it's going to count as a team stat and not an individual stat. So that's pretty cool, actually. I like that. I never thought it should count against them to begin with. I mean, if guys have enough balls to throw it up there at the end, then why kind of like discourage them from doing that and count it against them? I know Joker does that a lot, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the stats. He's just trying to get a cheap three about once a year, and sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. But I like that rule change. NBA did something good there. I mean, going back in time, I don't know what that would have changed as far as guys' stats going back, but I mean, it's not like you take a ton of these shots to begin with. So I do like the rule change. And that one other thing in the NBA, I saw where Adam Silver was talking about, and I posted this earlier on Twitter, talking about streaming. People who cannot afford to stream NBA games, they can watch the highlights. I guess he's talking like on Sports Center or one of the channels that show the highlights, and he was pretty much saying that if you can't afford it, then I guess you can always watch it later as far as 3 minutes worth of highlights. And all I got to say about that is, first of all, the U.S. Department of Justice decided to not prosecute people who are illegally streaming things. One of these streaming services. They are prosecuting, however, the people that are sending out the signal. So good for them. But my thoughts on that are maybe, just maybe, we should stop paying players $60 million a year and make it affordable for everybody. I mean, if you can't live off of 10 million per year, by the way, then something is not right in your mind. And that's just my thoughts on that. I mean, everybody's going to think differently, but I don't think any player, I don't care what sport it is, should ever make $60 million. Maybe in endorsements. I mean, capitalism, yeah, okay, that's fine. Maybe if you get endorsements, not to actually play the game. I've played basketball, I've played football, I've played a lot of sports. I coach basketball. I love the game. I would literally play for a regular paycheck, but that's just me. And I guess it's easy for me to say that since I don't have talent like LeBron James or the guys that play in the NBA. So, or even overseas, those guys are talented as well. They don't get enough publicity here, but there's a lot of good players in Europe and across in other countries. So, anyway, switching over to the NFL, obviously everybody saw Sunday Night Football. The last broadcast I did was Sunday night, right before that game. I think the game kicked off right before I went off the air. Um, Look, it's funny because everybody praising Josh Allen, and rightfully so. I mean, the guy put on a Superman cape, put the team on his back, and brought them back from down 15. Obviously, in that situation, there was some big mistakes by Baltimore, which I will get into in a second. But it takes a little bit of both. It takes a little bit of luck, a little bit of bad play calling, or at least bad execution on one end, and then it takes somebody like Josh Allen to bring them back. I thought a lot of those throws were pretty easy, actually. The decision making was there, so that was good. And that's one of the things I am going to say, because I have been one of the guys who have not I haven't really thrown him under the bus, but I've always said that Josh Allen, he's a great player, but sometimes he does really stupid things. But I also went on to say that if he ever corrected that to where he started not doing stupid things, and obviously everybody makes mistakes, but I'm just saying stupid things in general, that he would become the best player in the NFL. And I'm not so sure that we haven't gotten there now, because there was one instance, and I think it was when they were already down 15 in the fourth quarter, that they had the ball, I think 8 or 9 minutes. I don't know exactly the time, but um, where they had the ball and he was getting ready to get sacked. And instead of just trying to make a play and either fumbling or either throwing it up for grabs like he wouldn't do in the past, it looked like a different Josh Allen to me. He actually just tucked the ball under and just took the sack like a man and moved on and carried on and went to the next play. They had to punt. They ended up getting it back after a 3-and-out, I believe, and they went down and scored a touchdown after that. That looked like a different Josh Allen to me. And if that is what he is going to be from now on, he's going to be even better. I mean, I already knew he was one of the better quarterbacks in the league, but once he stops making mistakes, he becomes arguably the best. I mean, it depends on your viewpoint, but the best quarterback in the league. One of the things I also want to talk about in that game, and it's funny because we always talk about the winner, but, and rightfully so, but we also have to talk about the losers. And it's funny because you would hear people talk about that game and you would think Lamar didn't play like great. I mean, he literally almost played perfect. They just found a way to lose, which sometimes happens in football, sometimes happens in sports. It doesn't matter what sport it is. Sometimes you play perfect and lose, and sometimes you play poorly and win. I used to play cards for a living, and that happens in cards as well. Sometimes you sit at a table and you play perfect, and somehow you walk away with absolutely nothing to show for it. And then other times you play really, really poorly, and you walk away and you win. So happens in all sports, happens in pretty much everything. Um, but Lamar played pretty much perfect. Let's be honest. I mean, the dude just went crazy. It to me, it looked like the best Lamar we've seen in a while. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean play. I mean just actual how he looked healthy for once. And I remember for a couple of years, I kept watching him on primetime games, and he just didn't look healthy. He didn't look like he was running full speed this particular weekend. And I'm sure he's lost a little bit of his speed, probably still faster than 99.9% of guys. but he looked refreshed. He looked full speed. He looked non injured or completely healthy. Obviously, these guys, once you're this point in the career, they're not 100% healthy, so it doesn't matter what they do, but they're never going to be. It's like a battery on an iPhone. You know, once it goes down to full capacity is 95%, it's never going back to 100. It's going to keep going down. But he looked really good, and so both quarterbacks proving why they are the league MVPs. Um, Look, nothing away from Patrick Mahomes. What Patrick Mahomes, and I always say this, and just like last week, I said it after that game. Patrick Mahomes kept them in that game. If it wasn't for Patrick Mahomes, they would have gotten beat by at least 2 touchdowns, if not three. And what he does with his legs on third down is the most underrated stat of his game, or the most underrated play of his game, because he is very, very deceptive with his feet and very good at picking up first downs on third down, especially third and long. Third and 8 plus, Mahomes is, I mean, sneaky good on that. So I witnessed it both Super Bowls against my 49ers whenever they had a big third down. He picked up a lot of those on third down with his feet. So, but not taking anything from him, I still think Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, in no particular order, are the best two quarterbacks in the NFL. When you add that element of running into the game, and Josh Allen's a different beast because obviously neither one of the guys have ever went to the Super Bowl, ever won a Super Bowl, but um, they both just do things that you just are in awe of every single week. Josh Allen just puts the team on his shoulders, and I mean, you know, he doesn't have a lot of weapons. He's got some guys that a lot of people don't know of. He's got a lot of guys. It seems like every one of their receivers are possession receivers, which is usually not a good thing when they're all like that. But he just makes plays, and the guys just keep making plays for him. And I know they like playing for him. And then Lamar on the other side, it was like a two versus one kind of combo deal Sunday night. Lamar and Derrick Henry, who went wild, by the way. Um, and I know Derrick Henry fumbling the ball obviously helped the comeback for Buffalo. But one of the things I wanted to talk about on that game that I don't hear a lot of people talking about was the play calling by Harbaugh. Look, and I'm not second guessing this. I said it. I was saying it as soon as it happened. When you got 4th and 2, with the way Baltimore's been running the ball, first of all, I didn't understand why Derrick Henry wasn't on the field. I know he wasn't on the field on third down, but I don't think he was on the field on second down either. But I could be wrong about that. I don't remember. I haven't rewatched it yet. But um, when you have 4th and 2, and I know people are going to say, yeah, if you don't get it there, and I think even Chris Collinsworth said it on the broadcast. If you go for it here, if you don't get it, you're going to already put them in field goal range. It was either him or Mike Tirico. One mentioned it, and the other one kind of said it went the other way. I go for it every time, and I'm not just saying that now because they ended up losing. I go for it every time because most of the time aggressive coaches in the NFL are usually winners. But with more than that, at that point, you should have known, even if they kick it and they pin them inside the 10-yard line, you're not stopping Josh Allen. You haven't stopped him the entire second half. The team has got momentum. The home team has got momentum, even though about 25,000 people left the stadium. They had all the momentum. Baltimore hadn't stopped him one time over the last couple of possessions, and I didn't see it. I didn't foresee it coming then either. So at that point, I looked at it like this, and this is what I posted on Twitter, I believe. I usually end up deleting most of my tweets, other than the records and the plays of that day, so that way I can keep copies of what I've done. But I posted it, and I said it, and I believed it then, and I still believe it, which is this. Your chances of winning if you punt the ball to Josh Allen there, in my opinion, with the way the defense is playing, with the way Josh Allen and the offense is playing, I would say about 15 to 20%. However, if you go for it on fourth down, your chances of picking that up and the game being over at that point, they would have only had one timeout left. The game is over. You could take a knee at that point. The chances of you picking up 4th and 2 with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry at that point, with the way your offense is also playing on the other side, was probably between 60 and 70%. So on one side, you got 15 to 20% chance to win, and on the other side, you have 60 to 70. I'll take the 60 to 70. I am a math genius, which is one of the things I'm good at, but you don't have to be good at math to see that. I would take the 60 to 70% all day. So obviously, Harbaugh saw it a different way, and I guess, And that's probably one of the hard parts of coaching is the fact that you know that, and not that they care about what the media is going to say or people watching is going to say. However, when you have that, when you're in that position and you're having to make a call, that has to go through your head. You're human. So you have to think, oh my God, if I go for it here and don't get it and they get a game winning field goal, I'm going to get crucified. Rightfully so. That's true. It is going to happen. However, if you go for it on fourth down and you pick up the fourth down, forget what people are going to say. You're going to win the game and the game is over. Not only that, but if you think about it also, if you go for it there and you don't get it, Buffalo's already at the 40 something yard line. So even if you give up a couple of big plays and they score, I mean, you might get the ball back with a chance to score yourself. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at that, but I go for it every time there. That's just me. And I know it's like I said, it's easy to say it after the fact, but I I would go for it there every time, and it wasn't just because they lost. I just think it's the right move. So, um, some big games last weekend. We saw Monday Night Football after the show. Chicago and Minnesota. Chicago came out. Caleb Williams came out 10 for 10, was on fire. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like Minnesota changed their defense a little bit. They kind of figured out what Chicago was trying to do. They started getting pressure on him a little bit, which really handicapped them as far as what they could do. And he started looking completely different going later into the second quarter and then obviously into the second half. McCarthy didn't look good at the beginning either. Some of it was him, some of it was offensive line, some of it was just the flow of the game. But all of a sudden, he caught fire, and that's something that you hardly ever see. Not just because he's so young and he's starting his first NFL game, but also because they were on the road in a hostile environment on Monday Night Football. So for a team to grab momentum down, I think they were down 17-6 at that point, and then carry the momentum and just keep carrying the momentum, and Chicago was never able to regain the momentum. That's pretty unusual, and it's not just on the quarterback. That was a team effort. I really like their coaching staff. I always have since he's been there. I think he's one of the top 5, 6 coaches in the NFL, not only with play calling, but I think his team really respects and looks up to him the way they play for him. So I really like that. So McCarthy did look good. I thought they were obviously the pick six before they got hot. I don't know if that was a wrong route run. I have no idea. They haven't come out and said anything, or if it was just an underthrow or it was just a bad decision. But man, he got hot and he started playing really well. And he didn't make any like throws that make you go wow, but the poise that he kept, that was pretty impressive to see. I've been asked several times about McCarthy, and my only response is, and it's the truth, I haven't seen him enough to make any like predictions or to say this or that. Even in college, I didn't see him enough to kind of make a assessment of his play. So wait and see on that. Let's see how he does this weekend after coming. Now all of a sudden he's the big man on campus, so to speak. I saw the locker room after the game. He got the game ball. That was pretty cool. Rightfully so. He deserved it. But let's see how he plays this week. And let's see, where's Minnesota playing this week? I think they're at home. So yeah, they got the Falcons on Sunday Night Football. So they go from Monday Night Football to Sunday Night Football, which is kind of cool. Although some of these teams that I think that are going to end up being pretty good this year don't have many primetime games, and Minnesota coming out with 2 primetime games. I kind of don't understand that, but that's not my decision to make. So obviously tomorrow night we have 2 1-0 teams facing each other, 2 teams that a lot of people are starting to say that either one of them can make the Super Bowl from the NFC. Washington traveling to Green Bay. Washington last week pretty much held serve against the Giants. And I'm going to get to the Giants in a minute because I've been saying something for a while, and it's going to come to be true this year. I really believe that. But Green Bay looked very good, and for all the pundits who are coming out saying Detroit is going to do this and do that, or not do this and not do that because of one game, come on. It was on the road, first game of the year. Detroit's going to be there at the end. I'm not saying they're going to win anything. However, they are one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the NFC, no matter how they looked Sunday in Green Bay. Green Bay got a lead, and then all of a sudden they unleashed the dogs on them. And look, I've always said it. Jared Goff is one of those guys that when everything's going great, he's one of the top three quarterbacks in the NFL. When he gets the play action going, Detroit's running the ball 5-6 yards per carry. You can count on Jared Goff. But if you get him hit a couple of times, and as a 49ers fan, I've been watching him for a long time. You hit him a couple times and he turns back into a pumpkin. Not saying he's not a great quarterback, just saying that he's one of those guys that he does not like to get hit. He got hit some on versus Green Bay, and that kind of changed it. I mean, obviously they couldn't run the ball, and that was the big thing. So I want to see what that Washington Green Bay game looks like tomorrow. But it's going to be interesting to also watch Detroit after Chicago ended up losing a 17-6 lead. They're going to go on the road to Detroit now. Detroit really needs this. Obviously, the Bears need this. I need Detroit just to win because I had the Bears to go under as my play of the year as far as season win totals. They were my 3-unit play. I've hit, I think, 8 straight of those. So that was a good comeback for Minnesota for me. I had Chicago in a non-loss situation there, meaning I didn't have them necessarily winning the game or, I mean, obviously tying it, but I didn't put them down as a loss. And the way I do that every year, I will go through a team schedule and I will mark down either if I'm trying to pick the over, I will mark down all their wins. If I'm trying to get them to the under, I will mark down all their losses. And that is one game that I did not have the Bears losing. So that's a good sign for that under 8.5. Obviously, that doesn't mean it's going to come true. There's a lot of football to be played, but that's a good start. Quickly looking at the board in the NFL, a couple of quick games that stood out to me. First of all, the New England Miami game is probably the first thing that stuck out. And I know you're saying New England Miami, both 0-1 teams, both didn't have good showings. Look, this is interesting because Miami came out at home as a 2.5 point favorite, and now it's down to 1. I know I know New England got pushed up last week, and they ended up not being able to deliver for the betters to win the game. But this is a very interesting line to me because Miami has to win this game. If they do not win this game, all of a sudden Mike McDaniel is in all kinds of trouble. Tua is already in all kinds of. I mean, they're both in the hot seat. Let's be honest. But if they don't win this game, their chances of making the playoffs, starting 0-2 against two teams that, let's be honest, will probably not be there at the end. Two winnable games, and they would start 0-2. I just don't see them recovering from that. So this is a big game for Miami, and for them to actually get bet down. And it's not a lot of public money; it's sharp money. So that's very interesting to watch. Another one is Jacksonville going to Cincinnati. Look, Cincinnati last week, and I had Cleveland as my play of the day in the NFL, as you guys would already know if you follow me. But Cleveland outplayed them by a mile. After the first quarter, it was all Cleveland. And Cincinnati ended up finding a way to win the game. Give them credit for that. Or more than likely, Cleveland found a way to choke the game. But Cleveland outplayed them, should have won the game straight out. They did cover the spread with ease. I had a lot of people on Twitter. I had posted a thing about why Jerry Jeudy didn't pitch the ball back on that last play. Look, at the end of the day, the right play is to pitch it back. I didn't want him to because I didn't want him to see that one of those where it starts going backwards and all of a sudden Cincinnati falls on it in the end zone and get a touchdown. That would have sucked. So I had a little fun with that. But so Jacksonville looking pretty good last week, albeit it was Carolina. Carolina looked terrible. Bryce Young looked terrible again. But I'll be honest, I don't think Trevor Lawrence looked good either. So Cincinnati's offensive line started the game against Cleveland looking really good, especially in the run game. And then all of a sudden, there was a holding call halfway through the second quarter, and it changed everything for their offensive line. Cleveland got a little pressure after that. It was 1st and 20. Started getting pressure. I know Myles Garrett got 2 straight sacks, almost had 3. And it changed, and Cleveland outplayed them from that point forward, and it wasn't even close. Cincinnati couldn't do anything offensively. So yeah, it doesn't matter what kind of dogs you got on the outside if you can't get them the ball, and that's why I picked Cleveland as my play of the day on the first game is because like I had said on the air on our first recording that if you don't have time to get those outside guys open, then and you get dominated at the line of scrimmage, you can't run the ball, then bad things are going to happen, and that's what happened. So obviously Cleveland going to Baltimore this week, I definitely won't touch that. I don't like 10 plus point spreads in the NFL. It's just not something I do. So, um, New York going to Dallas Sunday, a 1 o'clock window. Look, Dallas looked better than everybody thought, including myself. I can't lie. Um, they looked they looked really good offensively. They looked really good early offensively, and then they looked really good defensively late. Um, Without Micah Parsons, obviously, I don't know what either one of these teams are. Look, I said it before the season. I posted it everywhere. I said it on the radio that the Giants' problem was never Daniel Jones, and it still isn't. And they will, if they play poorly this weekend, they're probably going to bench Russ. Let's be completely honest. They're going to bring in the rookie, Jackson Dart, and he probably will have one or two big moments, but he probably won't look good either. And it has nothing to do with Russ, and it has nothing to do with Dart. It is simply the fact that they just don't protect their quarterbacks. And outside of one or two guys, they don't have any weapons to really scare anybody defensively. So it's easy to game plan against them. So it's interesting to see that line has moved from 3 to 5.5, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens there as well. Um, the next game on the board that I'm looking at is Los Angeles Rams going to Tennessee. I thought Tennessee played really well against Denver, especially defensively. Obviously, Tennessee was the number one defense in the league last year in terms of yards, so that's not surprising. The rookie Cam Ward, there was some plays to be made there. I do think he played well considering where he was playing on the road, first NFL game. And look, his receivers did not do him any justice at all. Dude, I know Calvin Ridley dropped, it seemed like about 5 passes in a row in the fourth quarter. But I thought he played pretty well. The only thing about him that I would say, the only thing I didn't like about what I saw from Cam Ward was that he has one thing that reminded me a lot of, as a 49ers fan, a lot of Colin Kaepernick, which is he throws the ball so hard every single play. And that's not a good thing necessarily. It's good to get it there. Josh Allen with the strong arm, Patrick Mahomes with the strong arm. But sometimes you have to put touch on it and let your receivers. There was a couple of those throws, even though Calvin Ridley would probably admit to a man that he should have caught those, that if he had put a little touch on it, I think it would have been a lot better than, or a lot better outcome than what they had. So I think they could have moved the ball a little better there. Switching back up to Jacksonville real quick, talked about Cincinnati. I don't think Trevor Lawrence played well either. I know a lot of people are, oh, he looked really good. Carolina had the worst rush defense in the league last year, dead last, and I think points allowed, I believe. Look, he didn't play well either. It wasn't like they won because of Trevor Lawrence. They had 200 rushing yards, which opens up everything for the passing game, and he still didn't have big numbers. So that to me was alarming. And I said it when he came out. I didn't believe in him. I still don't. Rams, going back to the Tennessee game, the Rams started at 5.5. They're still 5.5 going on the road. Their first road game, obviously, they beat Houston last week in a really good competitive game. I wouldn't touch this for anything because it's just Rams coming off a huge emotional win. Tennessee looking to get to rebound after a loss. The point spread's about where I think it should be. Wouldn't surprise me to see Tennessee hang in this game, but I wouldn't touch this one. So Buffalo coming off that big 15-point fourth quarter comeback going to the Jets. Now this is one game that is interesting because I had the Jets as my number. They're the fifth on the list as far as season win totals of one unit play to go over 5.5. And I said it. I said it on the radio. I said it on the first show. Look, Justin Fields is the perfect fit there. And the reason being is because they don't have weapons. So you have to create weapons. And he is a weapon by himself with his feet. So even though I don't like the fact that I don't like the way he goes through his progressions, I don't think he reads defenses very well, but he will get them first downs and score points on that with that offense because of his feet alone. And you saw it against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was a pretty good defense last year, and they put up 32. So, and he played really, really well. This is interesting. Another game that I don't think I'll probably touch. I saw the total did go from 44.5 to 46, and I can understand that after the way that Justin Fields played, and obviously the way that the Bills' offense with Josh Allen and their defense that didn't stop anything Sunday. So can understand that. And by the way, that Rams Titans game went from 45.5 down to 41. So that's interesting. We already talked about the Bears going on to Detroit. there might be something for us in that window. We will see come probably Friday when I make my picks officially on the air and then on the next show. I'm not going to give anything away now because I haven't actually officially made any picks yet in my mind, so we'll see. Um, Seattle going to Pittsburgh. This one's actually interesting as well because Pittsburgh's coming off of a really hard fought road win. Seattle's coming off of a really hard fought home loss against my 49ers. Thought they looked pretty good running the ball early. They didn't really ask Sam Darnold to do much. And now Pittsburgh comes out as only a 2.5 point favorite, and it's only moved up to 3. Now, I do expect this line to get up to 3.5 or 4 by Sunday morning. This is a 1 o'clock window. This is in Pittsburgh, so it's a 1 o'clock game. Um, Once again, it's another game that I wouldn't touch. I just don't understand the line at all. I said I had Seattle as going under 8.5 wins on the season. I think that was a 1 unit play as well. And I don't believe in this team, but for them only to be a 3 point underdog on the road, it makes me wonder what's going on there. So, and I will have a segment. You guys had it, you saw it last week, and I did win that one, even though it was an official pick. I did tell you guys, not so fast, my friend. And so be careful on that one. That is a not so fast, my friend, if I've ever seen one. Something doesn't smell right there, and when it doesn't smell right, usually it doesn't end right. So, next game on the board, the 49ers at the Saints. This will more than likely be a pick. Not going to give anything away right now, but San Francisco started at 7. They are down to 3.5. I do believe that I got the news earlier that Brock Purdy would not be playing. Um, Obviously, they are already without Jawan Jennings, who will be out. Uh, I'm sorry, not Jawan Jennings. George Kittle. They are without a lot of things, let's put it that way. And New Orleans already had a laundry list of injuries, plus they weren't very good to begin with, so especially on the offensive side of the ball. But we'll get to that later in the week. There will probably be a pick on that game, so we'll see. Carolina going to Arizona. That one's 4.5. It moved up to 7 now. Understandably so. Arizona first home game after going on the road and beating New Orleans. I know it was ugly last week. That's kind of how New Orleans is going to play all year. Try to keep it close and maybe have a chance at the end. Carolina looked terrible. They probably, out of all the teams other than not named Miami, they probably looked the worst. Um, so nothing on that right now. I do kind of lean Arizona, but I don't like laying this many points early in the season, so we'll see. I know a lot of people love chasing chalk, but not me. Um, Denver going to Indianapolis. Now, this is probably one of the sneakiest good games of the weekend. I said it. I don't know why I backed out of picking Indianapolis to go over their season total wins, but I did. I was a little puss on that, but I said Daniel Jones would prove that he was not the reason that they were losing in New York. I think that first game, obviously, it doesn't solidify that because it takes more than one game, but it's a good start. He played phenomenal. I saw a stat where he was either the only or one of only 2 guys ever. I think he was the only. It was on Scott Hansen, the Red Zones channel, that where his team scored on every possession of the game. All 7 possessions, Indianapolis got points. That is a very good stat for Daniel Jones. So we'll see what happens now. I see Denver actually move from 3 down to a 2 point favorite. The only thing I'll say about that, even though I do lean Indianapolis the home team because I did say I thought Daniel Jones was going to show that he's pretty damn good, and Indianapolis has one of the better offensive defensive line combinations in the NFL. Denver did not look very good at all last week against Tennessee, especially offensively. Matter of fact, and I saw Clay Travis mention this, and I agree with him. I have no idea what the Titans were doing before halftime. Denver only had 2 timeouts, and there was only 40 something seconds, I think 49, and they're out there trying to throw the ball inside their own 20-yard line. All they had to do was to run the ball once and then take 2 knees and or even take 3 knees at the end, and they get out of the half. They ended up giving the ball back to Denver. Denver ended up scoring a late touchdown, and that was the difference in the game at the end. So don't know what would happen if they wouldn't have done that. That was a really boneheaded decision. And Clay Travis was mentioning get rid of the whole coaching staff. I don't know if I'd take it to that extreme. Let's see what happens after that. But that was really stupid. So Denver didn't look good. Bo Nix didn't look good. So now this is a very important game for them because we're going to find out about them early on. Find out what do they really have and what do they not have. I mean, are they really going to be as good as they were last year, or maybe even better, or was it just a mirage? And teams have kind of figured Bo Nix out. We'll find out in the next couple of weeks. So that's one of those games that would be hard to make a pick on because I could see it going both ways. Then we have, of course, the rematch of the Super Bowl with Philadelphia going to Kansas City. And this is one that I definitely wanted to talk about and probably not going to have a pick on this game. However, for all the people who are counting Kansas City out, stop it already. Look, I picked them to go under 11 and a half wins. I even said on the show and on the radio show that I didn't think that I thought there was a really good possibility that they were going to miss the playoffs this year. But after one game, some of these people who were already on the Kansas City bandwagon jumping completely off of it because of one game, you can't do that. Either you're on or you're off. If you said it before the year like me, that's a different story. But to jump off because of one bad game against their, division rivals in a game that Herbert played incredibly well and the defense played incredibly well. So let's see what happens this Sunday and then go from there. Philadelphia didn't exactly impress anyone against the Cowboys either. I mean, their offense was hot early, but they couldn't stop the Cowboys, and then finally they started getting stops, but they couldn't move the ball. So we'll see what happens. It's a very big game for Kansas City. I mean, for both, obviously, but I think it's a bigger game for Kansas City. They have a really tough schedule, and that actually would be a very good win or loss in that situation for me if they were to lose again and go 0-2. Since we got the under 11 and a half wins, that would be great. Sunday night football, Atlanta, Minnesota. Not really much to talk about. I don't really care for either one of those teams yet. We'll see what happens in that game. It's a decent game. I thought they could have probably picked something better. I'd rather see something like Denver, Indianapolis, obviously Philadelphia, Kansas City, but they're not going to get really that 425 spot on that. So then we have Monday Night Football. We have two games this week. Usually the NFL starts with two games, and on the first week, and then it goes from one. This time it's reversed. It's the second week they're doing two games. Tampa at Houston, and then the Chargers at the Raiders. Both very, very good games. If you guys have been paying attention, I picked the Buccaneers to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC, not only to go, but to win the whole thing this year. And so against Baltimore. So these are the kind of games that become interesting because as you could see last week, they have another weapon in Tampa now. Obviously, they didn't have Chris Godwin, so they wasn't fully complemented as far as their offense last week. Houston has one of the top three or four defenses in the league, as you could see last week against the Rams. But what do we have offensively with Houston? We don't know that yet. They have a bunch of guys that are kind of like Buffalo. They have a bunch of guys that kind of remind you at the receiver position of possession receivers and slot receivers, but I mean nothing really to like say, oh my God, he's one of the true weapons in the NFL. And then you have C.J. Stroud, who's this jury's still out on. He had a hell of a rookie season, and then he kind of regressed last year. And now starting out last week, he didn't play very well, but I don't think it's really him. I think it's that offensive line. And until they shore that up, we don't know what Houston has either. So that total has moved from 46.5 down to 42.5. That's one of the biggest moves in the NFL this week. So, lastly, the Chargers at the Raiders. This is a very interesting game. Look, what are the Raiders? We don't know. They went on the road last week and got a W. Now they get to play their division rival at home. It's at 3.5. It started at 3. This is interesting. We're going to find out about the Chargers because if the Chargers are for real, these are the kind of games that they have to go and win. Obviously, I'm not sold on Jim Harbaugh. I know he's one of the better coaches. I just can't stand him because I thought the 49ers had the best roster for 2 of the years he was there, and they didn't win anything. And I think when Kaepernick was coming down the field in that NFC Championship, we had 3 timeouts in our back pocket, and instead he just didn't take one of the timeouts and let the team kind of, after a big first down past the midfield, he didn't take the time out there, and I think that cost the 49ers a chance to go to the Super Bowl. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Chargers this year. Let me switch it over here to college. I know this is kind of boring because I'm only one man and I don't have any help right now, and I'm gonna shore that up. My brother's gonna come on more, and I'm gonna get a couple other people. But couple of things that did stick out to me. And I told you guys when everybody was talking about Clemson and LSU, after LSU went to Memorial Stadium and beat Clemson 17-10, I heard a lot of people from where I'm originally from. I don't live there now, but from the upstate of South Carolina talking about Clemson's going to be okay, that was a top 3 team that they played and blah blah blah. I kept saying no, neither team is a top 10 team this year. Nobody wanted to listen. I'm telling you. First of all, Nutsmeyer's overrated. I gave that stat on on the college show last Friday. Last year against top 25 competition, he threw 10 touchdowns and 10 picks. That's not good. Also, Klubnik is a little overrated as well because at the end of the day, Klubnik is throwing the wide open guys last year and the line was protecting him. You don't see that this year because they played a really good team and then an underrated Troy team last week that was beating Clemson 16-0. Now Clemson gets to go on the road to Georgia Tech down in Atlanta, see what they made of down there. It started at 5.5, it's down to 3, which I knew it was going to move. I almost made that official pick on Monday, but I didn't. I haven't placed anything for myself as far as college goes. Well, I actually have, but I'll get to that Friday. Um, Georgia going to Tennessee. We don't know what either one of these teams are yet. I know Tennessee got bet up. It started at 6, and now it's down to 3.5. Georgia's favored by 3.5. They're sleepwalking the first 2 games as they always do when they play these pancake teams, and then all of a sudden Kirby Smart, the real team, comes out. Tennessee's looked really impressive, albeit who have they played? I know that first game against Syracuse. Syracuse went on last week and ended up winning in overtime against UConn, but Syracuse is not a very good football team, so we'll find out what happens there. Um, let's see. South Florida going to Miami of Florida. That's an interesting game. South Florida upset my Gators last week, and thank God for that because I want to see Billy Napier get fired. I've been saying it for 2.5 years. At the University of Florida, you have to get someone in there that's brash, that doesn't mind speaking their mind, that has a big ego, that likes to talk in the media, kind of like Spurrier. Even though Urban Meyer wasn't a big talker, he just carried himself differently. He was a little cocky and a little bit of an asshole, to be honest. And I think that's what they need. And this guy doesn't have it. He is too conservative on offense. He's just too quiet. The guys just don't want to go to play there anymore. And you're going to have to bring in somebody now that's a big name in order to change that program around. And if you don't, you're not going to do it. I know Scott Strickland came out after the game and said that he's our coach for the rest of the year. Well, that's a mistake. If you change him now, you have a chance to do something later. But now you're just hurting recruiting at the end of the year. They're going to get rid of him unless he were to win the rest of his games and then they ended up making the playoff. They're going to get rid of him. I mean, you can't lose to South Florida at home and expect to keep the coach. So I think it's a mistake when they try to keep him throughout the rest of the year because then at that point it's like, okay, well, you just hurt our recruiting because now we switch coaches. So now the kids that were maybe thinking about coming here are not going to come here. Kids that were already committed are probably going to decommit. So I don't like that, but whatever. Florida has a big game against LSU this Saturday in Baton Rouge, actually at 7:30. So we'll see. That line moved from 9.5 down to 7.5. I got a funny, and I don't. This probably won't be a play. I try to stay away from my teams, but I guarantee you're going to get Florida's best effort this weekend against an overrated LSU team. It would not surprise me to see the, and I don't want it to happen. This is not wishful thinking. I want to see Napier gone, but would not surprise me to see the Gators go down to LSU and shock them and pull the upset. Another interesting game in the SEC is Vanderbilt and South Carolina. Vanderbilt, and this was my not so fast, my friends, last week in college football. Vanderbilt going to Virginia Tech, only a 1-point underdog, 1.5, depends on where you got it. I said, look, not so fast, my friends. Vegas does not give away free money. They were down 20-10 at halftime. They outscored Virginia Tech 34-0. Yes, 34-0 in the second half. I was even contemplating, oh, well, maybe Vegas is starting to give away free money at halftime. I was like, wow, I'm surprised that this is a 10-point Virginia Tech lead. But, man, the real team showed up in the second half. So now Vanderbilt travels to South Carolina, down to Columbia. My brother's a big Gamecocks fan. Gamecocks have not looked good this year so far, especially offensively. They have not been able to move the ball. They couldn't move the ball last week early on against South Carolina. State. I know weather had something to do with that, but they haven't looked good. So that's an interesting matchup. That one started at 5. It's down to 4 in some spots, 4.5 at others. So for my money, the game of the week in college is going to be Texas A&M going to Notre Dame. That's a Saturday night game as well, 7:30. Big game for both teams. Look, I saw Notre Dame last 2 weeks ago against Miami. They ended up losing by 3. Notre Dame is definitely a playoff team, and Notre Dame is going to make some noise in the playoffs. I said it after I saw them against Miami, the way they came back. CJ Carr played really well. Although Miami ended up winning the game, both of those teams are playoff teams, and Notre Dame is going to be a tough out for whoever they play. Again, Marcus Freeman, and I don't say this much about the quarterback position, and I don't say it much about coaches because I'm usually right on about some of these things, but Marcus Freeman has proved me wrong. I did not think it was a good hire. I said it when they got him. He has proved me wrong and then some. This dude can flat out coach. He can motivate. He knows where the game is won at the line of scrimmage. They're big, ugly, nasty at the line of scrimmage on both sides. This is going to be a team to contend with at the end. This is why this is an interesting matchup to me because Texas A&M got a dual threat quarterback, has looked really good, especially on the offensive side of the ball so far. But does the real Texas A&M show up Saturday night? We shall see. If they end up, even if they stay within 7, I think it's an impressive performance by them. If they were to somehow go to um, Indiana and beat Notre Dame somehow, then all of a sudden you got to start looking at Texas A&M as a real contender. I don't think that's going to happen. No official picks on this yet. We shall see what happens on Friday. All right. Now, instead of boring you to death, okay, I wanted to talk about something that I see a lot of handicappers online arguing about, mad about, pissed off about, talking about constantly. CLV, closing line value. Okay. One specific handicapper, and I even wrote him a big essay and tried to inform him and try to educate him. But these guys all think that they're the smartest guy in the room. And look, I'm not one of those guys. If you have something and you can show me something that's going to end up helping me make some money in the long run, I'm going to listen to you. I absorb the information because everybody has their own little niche. And these people that come out and you win 3 or 4 games in a row and people are goating you and saying you're the best ever and blah, blah, blah. Come on. There is no such thing as best ever. There's some of us guys, 3.6% of us who actually make profit. And then there's the other 93 point, what did I say? 3.6. So 96.4% that don't. Okay. So that's a big number. So there is no such thing as a goat. We're all here to try to make our money and that's it. Try to beat Vegas. However, you can tell a lot about cappers by how they handle themselves, by being egotistical, and we're all pretty egotistical, but the ones who actually absorb the information, listen, and actually use it to try to become better. And then there's others who just kind of like overlook it or just don't pay attention because they don't want to seem like you're smarter than them. It has nothing to do with smarts. It's about wisdom. It's about things that you've experienced, things that you've seen. I've tried to tell this guy, closing line value is the most overrated thing in sports betting. I saw someone talking about public betting, and it's the same way. You just have to find public betting can get you a couple of things. It can help you with handicapping some things, but it's not the public is 90%, so the other team is going to win. That's not how it works. But going back to closing line value, I wrote an article for Don Best back when I was on Don Best. And thank you, Eugene, by the way. You're awesome. You're my former boss at Don Best. I wrote an article. I had went through and I had went and researched over 30,000 games in different sports as far as closing line value. The team, the where the line moved, if you would have went against the line movement. So let's say, for example, this weekend, Florida and LSU. LSU started at 9.5 and it's moved down to 7.5. That means sharp money, probably, I would say the public's probably on LSU, but sharp money's on Florida. If you were to bet against the line movement, which means you would take LSU, forget the public in this one, which is a big thing also, and we'll get to that at some other time, but you would have won 55% in those 30,000 plus games that I went back and researched in different sports. It would have been about 54.8%, I believe it was, with a line that moved at least a point, and that includes both sides and totals. Now, when you get, and I tell this to people all the time, when you get to a line movement of more than 3.5 points, so four or more, it astronomically raises that number over, well over 60%, something like 64%, because it loses value. When you start with, let's say, a total, let's look at what I'm looking at here. And I'm not saying this is a perfect science because it's not. Okay, Akron and UAB started at 53, it's up to 58 now. If you would have gotten it at 53, 53 and a half, you had some pretty good value there. But now that it's at 58, you've lost all value there. Now it's just sharp money trying to hit both sides. Over on the 53, under on the 58. And that's one of the things that I tried to explain to some of these people online. A lot of times these lines will move because sharp money will try to get everybody, they will try to get a line to a certain point. So before the game kicks off, they can hammer the other side. Number one, because that's who they originally like to begin with. And number two, because then they can play both sides. They have a middle there. And a lot of these guys, and there's guys out there, that's all they do. All they're doing is looking for middles. That's all they do. That's how they make their money. All they have to hit is around 12 or 13%, and they make a ton of money doing that. And especially in the NFL where the lines are super, super thin, super tight, they make a lot of money with doing that. So you got to watch out for that. But not only that, there's a lot of reasons why lines move up and down, but closing line value has proven if you go against it over time, you will make your money 54.8%. Now, carry that even further. When the line moves more, we said that over 60. But if you go into a different sport, let's say basketball, for example, if you go throughout the NBA, the WNBA, not so much for college basketball, I didn't include college basketball on this research, so I can't say that for college basketball, but I did include thousands of NBA games, thousands of WNBA games. Closing line value means even less. When you see a team or a total move more than, I think I had it written down, I think it's 2 or 2.5 points, they lose almost 60% of the time, the team that is getting bet on. Think about that. That is a big number. As a matter of fact, I went back this past year, the last couple of days in the NBA. There were, I think in the last 3 days, there was like 18 games that moved at least 2 or 3 points in the NBA this past year, regular season. And out of the 18, I believe, I don't remember the numbers. I have them written them down somewhere, and maybe I'll try to bring it up next time. But out of those 18, like 10 of them lost against the spread by more than like 6 or 7 points. So the line moved one way, the other team ended up covering, or the other total ended up covering by at least 6 or 7 points in a lot of those games. I mean, it is phenomenal when you start doing the stats. But some of these people think they're just the smartest guy in the room. They have such an ego, they don't care. And that's how you can, and you don't have to follow me. I don't care if you follow me or not. I make my money and I'm doing this now because I want to get my little show and that's it. I ain't going to try to make any money off of you. You know, if we get hot and you want to throw me a little something, that's fine too. I'm just doing it for fun. But look, the way that if you want to know how do you find a good handicapper, number one, find someone that rarely loses by a lot. What do I mean by that? Okay. I know a lot of handicappers, a ton of them, and I know a lot of them are full of shit. Excuse my language, but that's true. And specific ones will say certain things to make you like them. They're trying their best to make you to follow them, whatever. Whether it be because they want you to think they're God or think they're, tip them, whatever it may be. Couple of ways to know if you've got a good guy. Number one, he doesn't lose by a lot. Don't go by somebody in baseball. Baseball, the average score in baseball is 4.5 to 4. So, which means the games are always close. Okay. Football, a guy that if he picks a total 54.5. Okay. For example, Auburn, and I mean, I'm sorry, not Auburn, Kentucky last week against Ole Miss. I got it at 52. I posted it at 51 online. It was at 50 with 13 seconds to play, and we know what happened. Kentucky he kicked a field goal, which they had the right play there. I don't know why Lane Kiffin called that timeout, but whatever. And they ended up going over by a point, just 1 point where I got it, and 2 points where I ended up posting it. That's where it could have went either way. It could have won. Whenever a handicapper is really good, their losses will be the narrowest most of the time. You got about that 5 to 10% of games that just things happen and you just couldn't foresee it no matter how good you are on it, and you're going to lose by 30, and those are okay too. So that's not necessarily a bad read, which is another point I'm going to bring up. That's just one of those things that just happens sometimes. But good handicappers are always close with their losses, and their wins are by a bunch. Not trying to toot my own horn, because you will never hear me say luck. You'll never hear me say goat. You'll never hear me say I'm great at this. But you will hear me when I am talking. You will hear something things, and just like with Green Bay, that wasn't close. You didn't have to sweat it at the end. That's a good thing. Sometimes sweating it is fun, but I would rather not sweat it. Another thing, guys that go out of their way to try to make you believe that they know what they're doing. Okay. Look, the record speaks for itself. You don't have to convince anybody you know what you're doing. Either you do or you don't. Guys will come out and say, oh, yeah, okay, in baseball, they will have an under, for example, under 4.5 first 5 innings, and it's 10-1 at the end of the five. And they're, oh, that was a bad read. Okay, first of all, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. There really is no such thing as a bad read in baseball. Here's why. The game is full of luck. One day a team will go out and will murder the ball, hit it 105 miles an hour coming off the bat every single play, but it's right at somebody. So they get 2 runs, and the whole team pretty much crushed the ball all night, but they ended up with 2 runs. The next night, the same exact team will be fooled on almost every single swing, but somehow make contact and somehow score 7 runs, 8 runs, and barely make contact. It's a game of luck. So when somebody comes out and says that that was a bad read in baseball, that is them trying to make you like them and to trust them. There's hardly any bad reads in baseball. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you pick a team and they're down 6-0 and it's the third inning and you pick them to win, that's a bad read, but that's also just a bad pick. It just happens. 162 games is going to happen. That's another thing. When they always mention in luck, that's okay. Pros don't mention luck, first of all. Okay. Second of all, it's okay if the guy's semi-pro and he does this semi for a living, or even for a living, but he's not pro like he's betting thousands of dollars, but he does do it for a living. Here's the problem. If you're always mentioning luck when it's against you, but you never mention it when it's for you, then you are probably trying your best to come across as a guy who is really probably not as good as you want to make it seem like you are. Okay, I'll give you an example. And there's some guys that just drive me crazy with this, and some guys that I actually like, some guys that I actually don't pull. I don't pull against any capper unless they're just complete dickheads. But there's just some guys that just make me laugh. Okay, last week or the week before, this one specific guy, he had an over, if I can find the games. He had an over with San Francisco and Colorado, I believe it was. Let me see if I can find the game. It was Colorado with someone. Colorado, let me go to the Colorado schedule. Hold on one second. Here we go. All right. Let's go here. All right, there it is. Nope, but let's go to Colorado schedule. I can find it quick. All right, it ended up, I think it was that one right there. There it is. Okay, so that was on September the 1st. Okay, Colorado had 13 hits in this game and only 2 runs. Okay, is that what you would consider a bad beat? I don't know about bad beat, but that's you're supposed to. They were playing San Francisco. San Francisco ended up with 8 runs, so you would expect Colorado to at least score 4 to push the over. That was 11 or 11.5. They didn't. They ended up scoring 2 and ended up staying under. This specific handicapper, he mentioned that several times. Okay, but let's go back to that same September the 1st date. Once I can get it up here. This specific handicapper, and I don't like calling people out, but this drives me nuts. Okay, he also had two teams. Let's see where they were. I can't find them now. Oh, the Chicago Cubs was one. They were down three. They were down 6-1 at one point in the fifth inning, by the way. So looked like a definite loss. And he also had the Philadelphia Phillies, who were down 5-1 in the fifth inning. Okay, both of those teams ended up coming back and winning. He mentioned bad luck with the one he lost. He didn't say a word for the two he won. So if you want to talk about bad reads, those were bad reads. They were both down by at least 4 runs, the other one five, in the fifth inning late. That's halfway through the game. So that's another thing. These people that go out of their way, I have no idea why. They go out of their way to try to make you want to like them. Drives me crazy personally. But I know a lot of guys who are good at this, and I know a lot of guys who don't make excuses. But the reality is, a real pro, people that make a living off of this, don't give a damn if you follow them or not. Some of us just post our picks on Twitter to keep track of the record, and I'm just trying to get a little show going. I don't care if you follow my picks or if you fade them or whatever you want to do. I have been very successful with this, but I just want to get a little show because I love sports and I love talking about it. So that's a little tidbit. Anyways, I think we've taken enough time tonight. We're going to get to some picks on Friday. I'm just practicing doing this, talking. Obviously, I'm by myself tonight, so it's not very fun doing it by yourself. But if anybody were to watch this, I do appreciate it. We'll have some picks on Friday. Here and the radio will be the only two places that you will be able to find out what my units are until after the games, once I start going 2 units or higher, and what my play of the week is in each college and pro. That way, you will at least have to start listening to me somewhere because I'm trying to make a little name for myself as far as the show. I don't care about the money. I just want a little show going. So, anyways, you guys have a great night. And as the great Randy White would always say, the games are always better when you got a little action on them. However, as I'm going to say it every week, the games are always better when you got a little action and you end up winning some money. Until next time, you guys stay classy. Unless, of course, you lose by a hook because somebody missed a free throw and you want to show out and get kicked off of Twitter like I have. Till then, have a good night, guys. See you Friday.